controversy, although I don't particularly mind it, but I believe that nuclear power must be a part of any equation if you're going to seriously address the issue of greenhouse gas emissions. The French, 80% of their electricity today is generated through nuclear power. We either reprocess it or we store it, and instead we've got the worst of all worlds where we have nuclear waste stored in hundreds of places all over America. From a national security standpoint, we should be addressing this issue. So the other thing that we've tried to achieve and have not, Joe Lieberman and I have introduced and had votes on legislation calling for cap and trade of greenhouse gas emissions. I know you know what it is and what it's all about, but it's a free market-based incentive. The Europeans are doing it now. They've been having some problems with it, but it's the right way to go. General Electric, the world's largest corporation, has dedicated themselves to green technology. The General Electric is still committed to making maximum profits for their stockholders. So we can address this issue, and we can do it in a way that doesn't require great sacrifice, although in a little straight talk, in support of this cause, I don't mind asking for a little sacrifice on the future for the sake of future generations of young Americans. Why the heck shouldn't I? That's what America's all about, is leaving a better nation and a better world for future generations of Americans. But I'm not saying that we have to. I'm saying let's go through the free enterprise, capitalist, innovation, technology steps that are necessary, which could have enormous effect. So, my friends, I can only echo to you on this issue, and I'll get off it, the words of Tony Blair, a man who I think is a man of great courage in a number of ways. And he said, suppose that climate change is not real and that we're all wrong, and yet we develop green technologies and better technologies and reduce greenhouse gases in the world. All we have done is hand off a cleaner and better planet to the next generation of Americans. But suppose we are right and do nothing. Suppose we're right and do nothing. Then what kind of a planet are we going to give the next generation of Americans? So the choice is clear. And I think it's about time that Republicans and Democrats, for maybe the first time in a long time, come together, sit down, and enact legislation which will seriously address this issue. And as I say, free market, competitively, enterprise-based address to it. And there's another aspect of this situation. I have no stock in the Wall Street Journal, nor do I particularly care who owns it. But if you read the Wall Street Journal today, you will see a very interesting article. It's called "Energy Demand Will Outstrip Supply," oil industry says. And there's a very interesting chart, and it has consumption going up, and it has the production going down. And you can read the article. But the point is we need to do this from the standpoint of reduction of our dependence on foreign oil. And I think that those two issues can meet. It's a national security issue. A year ago, last November, I believe it was, there was an attempted attack on a Saudi oil refinery. Some of you may remember it or not. That attack, thank God, did not succeed. I'm told by experts if that attack had succeeded, you'd have seen the price of oil go to $150 a barrel literally overnight. Look around the world and see how vulnerable our supplies of oil is to events which may not be under our control, beginning with our own hemisphere and Venezuela, and take a trip around the world, and you will see that from a national standpoint alone, national security standpoint alone, we should not be dependent as much as we are on supplies of foreign oil. I think it fits right into the climate change issue. I want to talk about two more issues with you very quickly. One of them is the issue of why the Republicans lost the 2006 election. Of course, the issue of Iraq affected every American's vote and thinking as it should. We're in a war and we've sacrificed a great deal. But I think as far as our Republicans are concerned, it was spending. We Republicans allowed spending to lurch completely out of control. We presided over the largest increase in the size of government since the Great Society. And as you know, the spending led to corruption, which then led to members of Congress being in jail, which then contributes to, according to a Gallup poll a couple of weeks ago, the lowest approval rating of Congress at any time since Gallup has been taking a poll. Now, my friends, you get down that low, you're down to paid staffers and blood relatives. You can't get much lower than the numbers that we've seen for Congress. You know, I often say Congress spends money like a drunken sailor, only I never knew a sailor drunk or sober with the imagination of some of my colleagues. And that gets a laugh from time to time. But I'm not making this up when I tell you about 2 months ago, I received an email from a guy that said, as a former drunken sailor, I resent being compared to members of Congress. So that's how bad it's gotten. The president, we've got to have a line item veto, of course, and we got to balance the budget, and we got to pass all these resolutions. But Congress has got to have the will to say no, and stop this earmark spending. Which again, I don't toss the word corruption around lightly. We've got a member of Congress from California in jail right now. We've got a member of Congress from Ohio is in jail right now. The investigations continue on. It's corruption. And the American people have lost confidence in us, and that obviously has significant consequences if we don't start governing according to the desires and wishes of the American people, which is for us to sit down together and work out solutions to issues rather than be divided along partisan lines. The last issue I want to talk to you about, and we can probably talk some more about it, and that is, of course, the issue of the war in Iraq. I was in Iraq last week with Lindsey Graham. We met with the Prime Minister of Iraq, Maliki, and the Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Hashemi, and others, and we were in Ramadi, and we went around Iraq and spent time. It's very hot there now, and it's very tough. The conditions under which these young men and women are serving is remarkable. It's remarkable how tough it is, and they're out there in these forward operating bases 24/7 doing the work to try to make this new strategy of General Petraeus' surge strategy succeed. I'm happy to tell you there is some success. I'm sorry to tell you there's not as much as we want. I'm happy to tell you that there are places like Anbar Province where the casualties have been reduced dramatically. I'm sorry to tell you that there's areas outside of Baghdad where the bad guys, Al-Qaeda has moved out of Baghdad, and we are seeing higher incidents of conflict and higher casualties. But I do believe that this new strategy is having some success, and if given enough time, I think will succeed. The bad news is that the Iraqi government is not governing effectively. The Iraqi government has got to pass laws on oil, revenue sharing, on de-Ba'athification. They've got to have elections in the provinces, and I'd like to tell you they are, but they're not. And that is a key and great concern of mine today as we move forward. Because as you know, no counterinsurgency ever succeeds unless you get the military, political, economic, and social progress that all goes together after you get some kind of secure situation. Well, so what's going on in the Senate, on the floor of the Senate, and went on the floor of the House? I think for the 9th time we're taking up resolutions to get out of Iraq. We haven't passed a single appropriations bill. We're now nearly halfway through the year. Not one appropriations bill has been passed. Very little of any other interest, but they're pounding the issue of Iraq over and over and over and over again, and we'll be on it again this week. I'm flying back tonight so that we can go to the floor again. Well, my friends, the majority leader of the United States Senate has said the war is lost. If the war is lost, who won? Al-Qaeda? Did Al-Qaeda win? That's interesting. It's very interesting to the men and women who are serving, 160,000 of them, that they've lost a war.